grab them. Oh,
That's good.
I think we're good.
Okay, it should be live on YouTube and also live on Zoom. I will disappear. Goodbye.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. Poppy, Kartik, you are live. Take it away. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. So probably worth us doing some intros, but welcome to Ask an Expert. We have another one coming up that will speak to the day on. But for now, I'm Poppy. I am one of the solution engineers based in the UK, and I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Kartik.
Hey, I'm Kartik. I am also an SC, and I am here in Canada on the East Coast.
Cool. So I think we're going to leave it a little bit to let some questions roll in. But to just kind of plug in to upcoming sessions, we have a Ask Me Anything session with Simon Law. I believe that's actually happening over Reddit. But if I'm incorrect, please let me know. That's going to take place on the 5th of August at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so 10 a.m. Pacific time. If you're based in the UK, I'm sorry, you're going to have to Google that because I don't know the conversion off the top of my head. And then we also have another Ask a Tailscale Expert that is happening 2 weeks on the 13th of August. And that's going to be 1:30 p.m. Eastern time and 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. And that will be with Alex, who you're all very, very familiar with. Alex runs our YouTube channel. He does many more things, but you'll see his face all over there. And another amazing solution engineer, Jay, who I imagine people are familiar with as well. He's been around for a while. Right. And any questions, if you just pop them in the Q&A and they're going to get filtered through to us. So we'll get those addressed for you. I think what we can do whilst we kind of wait for questions to filter in is we can address a couple of questions that I think may have been answered last week. Sorry, during the last session, but I'm not 100%. So one of the questions that has come in is, I have an insurance requirement to require multi-factor authentication every time someone uses or logs into the VPN. Right now, the only setting I see for compliance is to require daily reauth. Any settings I'm missing? So in terms of re-authentication, when it comes to the node, that can only be reduced to a day. If you need to enforce multi-factor authentication, it may be something worth doing at the IDP level. However, if you desperately do need it to be lower than a day, I believe we are developing tooling to enable that in the future, but let me check with the team as to timelines on that. But yeah, moving forward, there should be a solution there, but it would be great specifically to understand what regulation is being put in place by the insurance on that one.
Cool. There was one that came in, which I guess might be a little low-hanging fruit. I'll take that one quickly. So why does subnet routing require enabling IP forwarding? So a subnet router is essentially forwarding packets as opposed to just receiving and sending them. So you can imagine the subnet router as being an interim between your source and your destination, forwarding packets just like a router does. So for that to happen on Linux, there specifically needs to be the IP forwarding flag on the kernel enabled, because typically most Linux distros, they do not run the networking stack in sort of a routing or a forwarding mode. So this is something that would need to be done either manually or orchestrated through your automation when you're setting up a subnet router, be that through like Cloud-init or Ansible. It's a sysctl flag, and you can kind of bake it into a conf file and have it apply every time the node comes up. So it should be sort of a touchless thing that just enables the forwarding.
Great, thank you. I can take the next one. So someone was recently on vacation in Cyprus and had a lot of issues using exit nodes from hotels and airports. Any suggestions? So it is fairly open-ended. Really, the main challenge you're going to be seeing when it comes to airports, hotels, is basically the issues around captive portals. They're probably going to have restrictive firewalls. They're probably not actually going to enforce any type of encryption. It would be interesting to know specifically what issues you were having. So if you were using an exit node, were you not able to access kind of a resource at home? Was your traffic not actually going through the exit node? If we can have a bit more information on that one, we can definitely circle back to that one. I'll make sure that we get back to that.
One thing I can add to that, having experienced this sort of thing at a hotel, not at an airport, is that a lot of times you are either going to get blocked via DNS or via SNI header kind of proxying. So there's usually something running on the firewall that looks at the packets that go out to the Tailscale control server, and it says, hey, we're not going to let this through when we look at the certificate and the host name, and kind of it matches the control plane to the Tailscale control server. There is a community project that our lovely colleague Lee has cooked up in the Mad Scientist Lab, which again, as with all community projects, is a cool little side project, not officially Tailscale supported and all that, but that is the kind of thinking that we would like to, at some point, maybe go down, where we explore a way to proxy the packets to control that you can sort of use in these restrictive environments, such that these kind of DNS and SNI matching tricks don't really end up working, and you get a better shot of punching through to the control server. That's generally the sort of restriction in some of these environments. So I'd just like to add that for places like hotels, or just like anywhere where there could be sort of like firewall blocking you at DNS or at layer 7.
Perfect, thank you. And yeah, I think we got a bit more information on it as well. I think the issue was when they were connected to the exit node, they weren't able to access the internet, and disabling the exit node seemed to resolve the issue for them. That seems to be, obviously, please do correct me if I'm wrong there, but that seems to be the information that we've had come through. Okay, and then I think we have a couple others that I can quickly jump on. Any plans to let users integrate their own Mulvad subscription? I'm currently having to pay for 2 subscriptions. So off the top of my head, I don't know if there is a plan for us to bring in your subscription. I know it has been something we've spoken about previously. If I could, though, ask you to send how long you have left on your subscription to support@tailscale.com, and we can definitely look into that as a case-by-case basis for you. Yeah. I fully appreciate paying for 2 subscriptions isn't ideal. But yeah, if you could reach out to the support team with how long your subscription with Mulvad lasts for, and we can look into that. And then there was just another really quick one that I saw, which we can grab, which is, when will TelDrive be available? And I would like a bit more information on that, because TelDrive, it is available at the moment. So I don't know if maybe you've experienced like an issue with it, or you're having trouble setting up TelDrive. But yeah, if you could be more specific, if there's kind of any blocker for you on that one, and then we can definitely help out there.
I guess there was a question regarding how our solution performs against a FortiGate VPN for someone whose client is looking for a standalone solution. I can speak a little bit, I think, in generalities, because not just with FortiGate, but with any kind of solution where you are in charge of setting up a mesh over IPsec. That's the kind of class of solutions I'll talk about here, which is what FortiGate is. First of all, I believe to actually like manage the mesh, you need FortiManager, which is additional licensing and all of that. And you need to also set up your FortiGate VPN in a specific kind of mesh configuration, and ensure that there are direct connections and all of that. What Tailscale does really well is 2 things. One is that the encryption is being done through WireGuard, which is very performant. The sort of key exchange and the general method of operation allows for the overhead to be potentially much lesser, assuming you can get direct connections. And then Tailscale can also really help you establish those direct connections and give you much better performance by leveraging WireGuard. But also, traversing NATs for you. So definitely I would look up the docs on how to accomplish direct connections with Tailscale. You only really would have a problem with hard NATs, but there are ways around it. And this is probably kind of one of the most asked things about Tailscale, but Tailscale will do its best to traverse NATs for you and give you the best performance possible. I think in terms of addressing the standalone part of the solution, Tailscale itself is a fully standalone VPN solution. You can run it either as a full mesh or use our ACLs to create more traditional VPN topologies if you want, and also leverage things like exit nodes and subnet routers. So I think the real kind of big difference it comes down to the protocol, which is WireGuard and the performance there, and sort of just the ease of use and being able to get those direct connections going to get the maximum performance possible between your nodes.
Great. And then I'll just come back to the tail drive because I appreciate you followed up. So yes, it should be available on your pro package. So what I would say is if I can have our trusty sidekick in the chat send the tail drive documentation. And yeah, you should absolutely have access to it based on what you're on. I mean, really, tail drive, my understanding is it's available across all packages, I'm very certain. So you shouldn't have any issues in terms of the initial access. If you are having trouble with configuring it, if you can just give us a bit more information on kind of exactly the behavior you're seeing. But in terms of if you should have access, you should, and then we're going to follow up with the documentation on how you can set that up. Great. And then I think we have another one that we can get some documentation for. So can I use a Fire Stick as a subnet router? Yes, you absolutely can. Let me find, I'm wondering actually if Alex has done a video for us. Let me see if I can get someone to find that. But in general, we do have documentation on how you can install Tailscale on Amazon Fire devices. So yeah, it will be feasible. It's just dependent on whether we have like a walkthrough video or not. So I'm going to trust my wonderful colleagues to see if they can find that theme for me.
Cool. I can take a question that is Kubernetes related. Finally, something that that is my wheelhouse. So there's a question that says that we would like to enable our OKE OCI cluster as an advertised exit node and pass through traffic. So you can certainly do that. I'm assuming that OKE here means the Oracle Kubernetes engine. Please correct me if I'm wrong there. The way that our established kind of pattern for setting up an exit node in Kubernetes works is that we have a Kubernetes operator that is pretty much able to be used ubiquitously in most cluster environments. What you would need in this particular case would be to just make sure that your OKE cluster has the ability to run privileged containers on it, because when the operator spins up an exit node, it more likely than not needs access to the DevTon underlying interface to be able to kind of use it as an exit node. So you can essentially spin up through the operator using our custom resource called a connector. So you can use that and kind of set up your worker nodes as an exit node, and then that connector will make sure that the pod that is going to be running the exit node can be scheduled wherever you want. And then that way you are making your cluster an exit node, or you're instantiating an exit node in your cluster. I don't think there should be anything like specifically OKE related that should like block you. The only real thing is that in general, exit nodes require access to the DevTon underlying interface, which means that container needs to be a privileged container. So in like GK autopilot or some more restrictive environment, it may be a bit more challenging to get exit nodes running, but yeah.
Cool. And then we have another one. So I have Proxmox and I want to install Docker. Should I install Docker on the PVE or inside either the VM or the LXC? So my recommendation, and would love Kartik to correct me if I'm wrong here, but install Docker inside the VM or the LXC container. If you install it directly on the PVE host, yeah, you could just see a lot of complicated system management. I imagine you'll probably see some conflicts. I can't say for certain, but yeah, I'm very, very clear on the answer being do it inside the VM or the LXC rather than the PVE host. Sorry, a lot of acronyms there.
The nature of the industry we're in. I totally agree with that assessment from Poppy. I will also add that Alex has done a couple of wonderful videos, or at least one, I believe, on Proxmox and Docker. So yeah, I would encourage to check it out. Yeah.
Perfect. And then there is just one that I'm hoping we can get a bit more clarity on. Someone's asked if they can use a Tailscale exit node using WireGuard as VPN client. Can I just double check? Are you trying to use a Tailscale exit node in combination with the WireGuard VPN client? If we can just get clarity on that, and then we can definitely come back to that one. I just want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding. Oh, and then we have another one. Can I make a feature request? It'd be really cool to have a health check in the Tailscale apps like Android and iOS to check if there's any DNS issues. Absolutely. Feature requests can always be made through our GitHub repo. I'll make sure, I think there's actually a specific URL we can send that will direct you directly to a feature request. But absolutely, if anyone from our community wants a particular feature, please do always feel that you can raise feature requests. And the community are big drivers of how we develop the product and what iterations we make. So yeah, please absolutely go ahead. I'll make sure that we get you the relevant link to get that done.
Yeah, and thank you for hosting the community project. We love community projects that help us out in these times. And give us ideas to, like, in the future get that into a feature request into official Tailscale. I believe our team does a really good job of highlighting community projects as well, and like this one, from my view, is definitely a really nice candidate for showcasing the future.
Great. And then just to come back on the Firestick one. So I set up the Firestick specifying the CIDR, but wasn't able to route to other devices on the LAN. Ideally, I'm going to ask if you can go to support on that one. It's just really helpful if you can generate a bug report for us. And then if we can just grab your telnet, please do not share that publicly here, of course. But yeah, if you could go direct to our support team, just confidentially, we can then look into that, because I'd want to do a bit more digging just to really see kind of if there's any restrictions on the telnet or anything else at play that's preventing that.
There was a quick follow-up here in the chat regarding the OKE, which is the Oracle Kubernetes Engine. So thank you for confirming that. I have just posted a link to the Kubernetes operator docs to use the connector CRD to get an exit node going. But as always, I'm sure that support will be very happy to help you if you open a ticket with them, if you're having implementation questions or any issues with getting the operator going on OK. There's a question that asks if there's any limitation in using Tailscale to connect to self-hosted databases that requires high throughput, or if there's any bottleneck while using the tailnet in terms of latency. So I think this, again, comes generally into the class of problems where you have a thing that you want to expose through Tailscale to the rest of your tailnet. And there are a few factors here that matter. One, of course, is the actual underlay, which is, the internet or the connection between your two things that you are trying to access. So let's just say, for example, you have a self-hosted database running in Virginia in AWS on an EC2 instance as a quick example. Obviously, if you're trying to kind of connect from across the world, you are subject to the same mercy of the internet that the rest of the traffic would be subjected to, barring any kind of AWS direct connect or anything like that. But I think in general, what this comes down to in terms of getting the best latency and performance possible is getting a direct connection between you and that self-hosted database. And the most common way to make that possible is to ensure that on one of the two sides that you control, that you do not have a NAT or you have an easy NAT. So let's say, for example, I have my MacBook in a coffee shop and I'm trying to connect to a self-hosted database on this EC2 instance in AWS. I might not be able to do anything about the Wi-Fi at the coffee shop that I'm at, which could be a hard NAT and would get me relayed rather than get a direct connection. But what I would be able to do is on the self-hosted side, on the security groups, I might be able to open up UDP port 41641, and then that would ensure that side is always a no NAT, which means that regardless of whether the other side is a hard NAT, you would always be able to get that direct connection. And so that will give you the best kind of latency and performance. And you can apply this to anything that you're trying to connect with Tailscale, be that a self-hosted database or any resource behind any other firewall. It's really important to do the best that you can to get those direct connections for the bits that you can control.
Perfect. And then we've also got, hello, is it safe to keep my, is it safe to keep it on my Synology NAS all the time? So I'm taking that as you're looking to keep your Synology just connected to the telnet at any point, essentially like an always-on exit node, albeit you may not be using it for that purpose. Yes, absolutely fine to keep it online. Obviously, the way Tailscale works is we're encrypting everything. It's going to be restricted to your telnet. So high level, that's absolutely fine. In terms of how to make it safer, obviously I can't see your telnet, but the main thing here is going to be making sure you're updating to the latest Tailscale version. That's mainly just a best practice when it comes to hygiene. And then equally, you want to make sure that your ACLs are locked down. So I don't know if it's just you and your telnet, but what I would make sure is you look at how you're granting access to your NAS. And you could reduce that so it is just your specific user. Realistically, it's near to impossible for anyone to get access to your telnet based on the features that we have available and how much you can lock it down. But I would say ACL's always best practice to make those as granular and as tight as they possibly can be. And that's just me coming from a security background and encouraging that. It's more work, it's worth doing the work.
I have another question that's pretty interesting. And this one asks, hello, is it possible to make Tailscale stop hijacking local DNS if it's online? I'm having trouble accessing the local DNS name because the DNS was hijacked by Tailscale even offline. I have a couple of ideas around this. I just wanted to ask Poppy if you had some ideas around getting around this.
Oh, you know what, I will, but I'm gonna have to dig out my old support tickets. You go ahead and let me see if I can grab my support days.
Yeah, so I think, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things that happens is we are used to referring to things by their short DNS names. And when you basically have something that has a host name available on your network, let's say host name 1, and you onboard that to Tailscale, it will automatically onboard itself with a Tailscale host name of host name 1 as well. And because Tailscale runs its own DNS resolver and it has the magic DNS kind of built in by default, when you are on Tailscale and you refer to the host by the hostname 1 short hostname, because Tailscale magic DNS is prioritized, it will essentially append its search domain of the tailnet to that and make you go through the Tailscale IP, the 100 IP. Now, when Tailscale is actually down, you should still be able to access it via your local DNS, unless you have a setting called override DNS. But again, that shouldn't affect you if the client itself is down. So that part I would be interested in understanding how it's being hijacked by Tailscale, even when like the Tailscale client is offline, if I'm understanding it correctly. But in this case, what I would do is I would either onboard the machine with a unique host name onto Tailscale so that you're not using the same short host name for your local versus Tailscale, because you can customize the host name as you're onboarding a machine. The other thing that I would do is if I wanted to keep the same host name on Tailscale and on my local LAN, I would just refer to it when I'm trying to SSH or access it by the fully qualified domain name. So hostname one dot, mytailnetname dot ts dot net would put you through the Tailscale IP, and then hostname one dot mydomain dot whatever it is on my local network would put me through the local LAN interface with the same host name. So those are your kind of two options in being able to do that. But I definitely am pretty surprised that when the Tailscale client is down, the local DNS is somehow being, so-called hijacked by Tailscale. Actually, Tailscale does a pretty good job of handing local DNS back to your resolver instead of having it at the Magic DNS resolver. So yeah, I'd be happy if you wanted to kind of give extra context on that, but this is how I would kind of implement a solution towards accessing.
Great. And then we also have, how do I send files to other machines using Taildrop when I have ACLs enabled? So you shouldn't have to modify your ACLs for just basic Taildrop functionality. One of the things that can catch people out is kind of how Taildrop works in comparison to Taildrive. So my question would be, my assumption is that they're all nodes that are under one particular user. So if they're all machines that you've auth as your particular user, you shouldn't have any trouble there. If you are trying to like Taildrop things between a node that from another user, that's not what Taildrop's built for. In that case, you want to refer to Taildrive. But yeah, if you're seeing any specific issues there, if you can, again, just give us a bit more information on that one. But high level, you shouldn't have to modify your ACLs to be sharing files between devices that you are logged into.
There's a question on just-in-time access that I'd be happy to take. So the question is, could you share examples of how your professional customers are using Tailscale's new just-in-time access feature? And then there's a question about, wanting to try it out. So I'll address the first part of the question first, which is how are customers using this? So Tailscale built, as a kind of example, a Slack access bot that kind of exists on GitHub that you can implement to integrate with our just-in-time access feature. This would be somebody requests through Slack temporary access to a resource, and off it goes, fires off a webhook to Tailscale, and makes the just-in-time access happen. What is actually happening there is that there is an ACL with a custom Tailscale attribute for that device, which will evaluate to either true or false. So if it evaluates to true, the ACL will let you in. If it evaluates for false, then it will not let you in. Tailscale has the ability to have these custom attributes live for a certain period of time. And so when I, through the access bot, say, hey, I would like to access production server for 15 minutes, it will basically go and add that attribute to that ACL for 15 minutes, which will allow traffic to then flow to the production instance from my user and let me access it for 15 minutes. Then that local attribute will expire, the ACL evaluates to false, and you're not going to have access again. So knowing this, right, like knowing that this is how it works, we encourage customers to develop their own kind of pipeline, which either fires off a webhook or calls the Tailscale API to then decide to add that custom attribute with the time. So if I really wanted to mimic this, I could just from a terminal call the local Tailscale API for a device and embed a custom attribute with a timestamp or a time range. So yeah. Really, we built this for the integration to be, hopefully as simple as possible. Maybe there are other integrations that we build coming later. I don't really have any news on that, but the Slack access bot is certainly an established pattern that our customers are trying out. And then for the most part, they're building into their own integrations that fire off a webhook to call the Tailscale API to get the just-in-time access going. I would also really encourage, there's a wonderful video from Alex and one of our other coworkers, Alan, that did a really good job of showing how the JIT flow works. Would encourage you guys to check that out.
Yeah, and then just in terms of use case, I think my favorite one that I've heard just going to the conferences for Tailscale is usually in like an incident process. So if someone needs temporary elevated accident access to investigate an incident, that's a really good use case. I have another one who's actually a friend of mine, and what they use JIT access for is to give temporary write access to the database. So write access for them is inherently completely locked down. So if anyone does need to make a write request, they'll basically do it using JIT, get temporarily approved for usually about half an hour for them to do that. And then they do have an audit log as well. So of course, if God forbid anything got overridden in the database, they would know exactly when and who it happened by and would hopefully be able to roll back. But yeah, those are two of my more kind of favorite use cases that I see, just because, again, having gone through the pain, I can see the benefit there. But if you have a specific use case, yeah, absolutely, we'd love to know. But that's a couple of things I've seen.
That's very cool. Touching a database is always nerve-wracking, I think, for any SRE.
Oh, and sorry, I've seen another one. And Kartik will know this because we talk about 4 via 6. Well, I talk about 4 via 6 probably every day to him, and he may be very tired about it. So we have a question that I was recently on a foreign LAN, and I had that had an identical subnet to my own. Unsurprisingly, subnet routing was unhappy. What's the correct way to avoid this? IPv6 question mark. So for this, what you want to do when you're on a LAN that uses the same subnet as your own, what you basically will encounter is overlapping IP ranges. That's what we would say internally. It's just a really common issue, but what it basically does is going to cause a ton of routing conflicts for you. My recommended solution is to use 4 via 6. It's basically a subnet router feature. What it allows you to do is assign an IPv6 address to a subnet, and then you can use that in replacement of the IP4 subnet range. So yeah, absolutely recommend using that. It's essentially high level. It's basically just 2 CLI commands. I know these docs because these docs are very close to my heart. So let me get that sent in the chat for you. But yeah, setting that up should fix the issue for you.
Cool. There's a couple of questions around support. One of them was, are there any plans for native support for MikroTik in the future? Yeah, I love that too. I'm actually looking into a MikroTik stack for my home lab right now, switching from Unify for several reasons. But yeah, I will definitely see if I can, bump that one up, because selfishly that would benefit me as well in the future. And then there's another ask for split DNS, not only on the admin panel, but at the Tailscale node for offline mode, so we can access our node with local DNS name, even if there's no internet. So that's an interesting one. I think in general, any kind of offline mode with DNS is something that we haven't really explored so far. Again, split DNS is something that is only enforced when you are part of the tailnet. Now, of course, you can continue to have data plane connections when you're not connected to control. So I'm hoping that that's what offline means in this sort of case. But that's a good idea. I would love to maybe hear a little bit more on like what you think a design for that would look like. But as it stands right now, like I said, when I talked about the other local DNS name versus Tailscale DNS name, that concept should still apply even in offline mode if you kind of set it up that way, where you can still access things in your LAN through the local DNS name. So yeah, but would love to hear more about that for sure, so I can try to understand how I can put that forth as a feature request.
Yeah, we can pop our heads together on that one. Great. And then we've also had one around for the mobile app, is it expected to toggle on and off as you leave and come home, or leave it on all the time? I don't like my LAN traffic having to go through the internet. Completely up to you, basically. What I do is I actually just leave mine on all the time. I don't want to think about, I want everything that I'm doing on my phone to be encrypted. So yeah, I basically with the Tailscale app, for me, it's just set it and forget it. So you don't have to toggle it on and off, but it really depends on your level of comfortability. I know some people do, they only really care about it when they're, you know, away from their home Wi-Fi. I just keep mine on as default because to be honest, it's easier than me remembering to toggle it on and off. But yeah, there is no kind of right and wrong answer when it gets to that. My recommendation would be at a bare minimum, you're always enabling it when you're not on a secure Wi-Fi. So when you're not on a secure network like your home Wi-Fi. But even then, secure can mean a few different things. So I would keep it on all the time. But yeah, it's very, very much down to your own preference.
I'd just like to add, make sure that you have access to charging or a mobile charger, because in general, keeping any VPN on is going to drain your battery. So yeah, that's why I have a bunch of portable chargers. So I can leave Tailscale on all the time.
Yeah, and hopefully you're not on a really outdated iPhone, because I know that batteries deprecate very quickly, regardless whether I have my VPN on my iPhone 13 now. So I refuse to upgrade though. Perfect. And then we do have one question. I just wanted to let you know that we are looking into this. Any update on Taildrive moving out of alpha? I don't know off the top of my head, but I have asked the question, and hopefully I will hear back from our product teams and can get you an answer before we wrap.
There was a follow-up question that was interested in hearing why I wanted to switch from a Unify stack to a Microtech stack. I'm not going to say a lot about Unify. All I'm going to say is that their kind of stance as a company in data privacy has been called into question in recent years. And as much as I love going through a GUI and configuring everything, you know, as neatly as possible, I'm a fan of CLIs and doing things kind of the hard way. And the hard way forces you to learn. And I would love to basically get like a super powerful router with really good hardware that doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles in the sort of UI kind of experience. And I would like to be able to just kind of set up my BGP peerings and all of those things in a, you know, Cisco iOS CLI type workflow that I'm used to. I started out configuring Cisco and Avaya switches and Nortel switches and all that. So I guess I'm old, or you know, I've just dated myself. Yeah, I really enjoy just working in a CLI and like just having really good hardware without a lot of like bells and whistles on top. And it'll be a great learning experience for me. I think Unify, you know, is a great kind of environment to be in. Like their ecosystem is great and they have really good hardware. I just wanted something a little different now. That's all.
Great. And then I think we've had a follow-up around the Taildrop aspect. So how do I send files to other machines using Taildrop when I have ACLs enabled and tagged machines? So the main thing to remember when it comes to Taildrop is Taildrop's intended to be shared between like owned nodes. When you tag a node, that ownership changes from the individual to the telnet. So the way that Taildrop is designed to work, you can't actually send files to and from nodes that you have tagged, regardless of your ACL config. You could look at Taildrive as an alternative there, especially if you do need to share files with tagged devices, or you just want to have like a bit more flexible access, a bit more flexibility with your access control. But yeah, in terms of Taildrop, that's not going to work with tag nodes for you. So I'll share both the Taildrop documentation and the Taildrive, but it sounds like for what you want to do, it's probably better off just having a look at Taildrive in this instance.
There is a Windows related question that I'm a little afraid to answer but I would love to know the answer to it myself. I can give it a shot. So the question is, how can I connect my nodes that are served by Tailscale instead of locking my Windows 11 that picks up on it even even though it remotes went away. So I guess maybe the question here is talking about Tailscale running on Windows in general. Hopefully, I guess there is a quirk in terms of Tailscale being installed on Windows, is that it is installed by it can only run as one user profile at a time. So you can run it in what's called unattended mode. There's a flag that lets you do that with an auth key. That lets you run it as basically the kind of system account, and that lets you run it in a headless fashion that you can, then use it how you would use any other node. I do know that one thing that is not possible to do is kind of have two people RDP'd into the Windows box itself using Tailscale. But using a Windows node as a Tailscale subnet router or as a Tailscale node to access other things in your network in a headless fashion should still be possible. You shouldn't have to really like have an active user account like logged in and sitting there in this method, which is basically running it in unattended mode and with an auth key. You should be able to lock that device and have it still continue to function with Tailscale. But if I did misinterpret the question, I'm happy to follow up as well.
Sorry for the silence on my side there. I've just seen one where it's asking about our brand new TS state encrypted device posture attribute. I just want to get the documentation that I have up on this, but I would love to speak to that. It's coming out in 1.86, but basically what it's going to allow you to do is you can encrypt the state. So that's a system policy that's going to enforce storing the node state file in an encrypted format on your disk. So you're going to be using something like TPM for that. And then you can couple that in with device posture. But I have a really great document on this, so I want to dig that out for you.
Yeah, it's really cool to like learn about TPM, and honestly, it's like the biggest rabbit hole to go down. I didn't know anything about TPM other than the fact that, it's just a little hardware chip on your motherboard that has some immutable memory that holds your private keys, and then nothing can actually export the private key out. The part that I think has been really interesting to understand from a design standpoint is how every single TPM manufacturer implements the spec differently, or they utilize different parts of the spec. So getting to interact with an encrypted state file is definitely something that I think can iterate a lot more in the future and kind of making it more and more secure. There are certain solutions where a memory attack might still be able to compromise the state file, but like when you go from a posture of, hey, you're fully responsible for managing and encrypting the state file on disk with something like BitLocker, versus having a solution that like properly integrates with TPM, which BitLocker also does, and then like actually leveraging a TPM chip, I think is very, very cool, and it's a step forward in the right direction for keeping that file safe. That's all. I just really like the feature, and I'm gonna try it out. I myself have to play with it.
No, I have had a little test with it. I guess just for anyone who's not necessarily super familiar with TPMs, basically means it's a trusted platform module. In short, it's designed to securely generate and store cryptographic keys. We've brought that into Tailscale because originally each device joined your Tailnet. It basically had a local state file, and that was how it would remember its node identity. So that would include things like your private key. That file has always been protected, but how that's protected is using a file system level permissions and then your operating system security controls. So what you can actually do is just elevate that a step further by sealing that state file to the trusted platform module. It basically is going to mean that the node's identity is cryptographically bound to your specific machine. I guess actually whether it's a physical TPM or firmware backed is something to be cognizant of. But basically, if a malicious attacker tries to gain access to a disk, or they get snapshots, anything like that, that information is now just completely useless without the original TPM. So a lot of what Tailscale does is obviously we enforce security from a user perspective, but there's so many ways that you can also couple that in with device protection as well. So yeah, it's a really, really cool feature. We actually have a podcast coming out with myself, Alex, and my colleague Jay. I imagine you'll see a lot more of our faces. But we do touch on that. So definitely check into the podcast. It actually focuses on our changelog as a whole. I will confirm when that's actually getting released. But yeah, that's a great watch if you want to kind of learn more about the state encryption. But also if you just want to hear kind of what's gone out in 1.86.
Yeah, that was really great explanation. Thanks for that. I definitely learned a lot more than I knew before. Um, I did want to just very quickly call out, since we probably have a lot of new folks that joined the call, that there is going to be an AMA session on August 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, on our Tailscale subreddit with one of our lovely engineers, Simon Law. Yeah, if you want to ask the really, really smart people, the galaxy brain nerds that make the product as amazing as it is, like, do not miss that. You can please feel free to go in and drop your questions there.
Yeah, absolutely second that. Simon's knowledge is, yeah, incredible. So any of the really niche, weird edge cases, things you're trying to achieve with Tailscale, throw it all at him. Throw it all at him. I may regret saying this. I'm sorry, Simon, if you're watching. Cool. And I think we had another one around subnet routers and exit nodes. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So it says, about subnet routers, when this node becomes an exit node, does the subnet automatically route the outbound traffic into that exit node? And Kartik, please correct me on this if I'm wrong. But no, when a subnet router also advertises itself as an exit node, the subnet behind that router does not automatically route its outbound internet traffic through the exit node. Devices behind the subnet router will continue to use their existing default gateway for that outbound internet traffic, unless you explicitly change their routing tables to point to the subnet router as their default gateway. So is there a way to do it? Yes. Does it happen as default? No.
Yeah, that's completely right. I think just exit node in general is opt-in, and in terms of existing routing of the clients behind the subnet router, again, unless they choose to use the exit node, they will not automatically actually use it and continue to use the existing default route out. I think there's a question about planning to support other VPNs other than Mulvad. I mean, we would love to see it again, selfishly, but Poppy, any thoughts on that? This is another thing to put on the wish list.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a wish list item off the top of my head, and I have just gone over the roadmap for the next 6 months. I can definitely say there aren't any plans in the next 6 months. Is our product team thinking about longer term than that? Of course they are. I don't get on at them too much when it comes to understanding kind of the next year, the next 2 years. So I will ask in our product team. Realistically, I'm going to say as of now, I don't think there's any short-term plans to support anything else other than Mulvad. Long term, I imagine so, but yeah, I don't have a anything categoric necessarily on that one.
There was a question that said, is there going to be Tailscale integration with AWS IAM access, or I think in general, kind of any of these auth methods to be able to kind of use that? I believe yes, coming soon, if not already. There's already work that's being done in the Kubernetes operator for our Kube API server proxy that you will be able to sort of leverage your IAM. There's, I believe, the general solution to get auth in for that is going to be there soon. I think again, Lee has done some testing on this regard. I obviously don't have timelines, but I believe this is something that is definitely on the roadmap, and it's cooking. So
It's cooking. It's cooking. And then I did want to follow up. Where is it? Around the question about turning Tailscale on and off when at home, is there a way to set exit nodes and or subnet routers dependent on whether or not we already would have local access? So there isn't anything built in. So there's not like a fully automatic way to enable or disable exit nodes or subnet routers based on whether you already have local access to a network. It is something that we've had raised many, many times, something that I would love, but from a technical implementation standpoint, it can be pretty tricky to reliably manage. We don't want to necessarily look at automatically trusting a network based on like SSID, or subnets that can potentially be spoofed. So there's just a lot that we need to think about when it comes into that. But it's definitely a question that we've had before, and I'm very certain we do have a feature request for this. So it's not something we've said no to. I can tell you it's definitely not something we have in active development at this time, but it's definitely not the first time I've heard it.
yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It really comes down to the security question of like, how do we know that when this user or device says it is on the local network, that it is truly on the local network and not spoofing itself to do so? Because anything that Tailscale is implementing, it can kind of trust that within the trust boundary. Um, Network information outside of Tailscale, such as your local LAN, again, could be, spurious information or not. And, a lot of bad things could happen if we implicitly trusted that. So it is a known thing. We are thinking about it and looking into how we could have a solution there that is, makes reasonable security assumptions and still continue to work. So that's the reasoning behind that. I don't know if I have the GitHub issue handy, but one of our engineers does a really good job of explaining the thinking, the reasoning behind this in one of the comments there.
Oh, and then I think we have time for one, potentially two. We'll see how quickly I can talk. And usually that's very, very quick. So we've got here, is Funnel suitable for exposing local game servers? So hosted in a Docker container on an Unraid server to the public internet, or are there limitations since it's in beta right now? Kartik would love you to correct me on this. It's not something that I've actually end-to-end tested for that particular use case. But I have a feeling you may have a lot of trouble with that. Basically, Tailscale Funnel, it's primarily designed to expose local web services. So you've got HTTP, HTTPS to the public internet. And Funnel basically works by proxying the TCP connections over TLS through our relay infrastructure. So you could use Funnel to expose web applications that are running in Docker containers on your Unraid server, but I think you're going to see some limitations when it comes to your game servers. So Funnel only supports TCP traffic over TLS. It doesn't support UDP. And then game servers that don't support TLS, they're not going to be able to be exposed. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You know what? I think Minecraft might be a good example there.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since I've played Minecraft, I've got to be honest.
I never have. I've always been like an ARPG Diablo fan. I do not venture outside my comfort zone. I think you're exactly right though on the answer there. Especially for the transport being what it is over TLS. I just think it's like pretty inefficient for low latency, high bandwidth applications. It really was designed to expose webhooks to like access your dashboards like Grafana, things like that, like self-hosted applications, like UIs for self-hosted applications. So yeah, you probably wouldn't have a great experience with most game servers.
And then we're really very nearly at time. And I want us to do, I'm sorry, it's going to be another shameless plug for what we have coming up. Because you get to see Alex's face, Jay and Simon are just incredible people. It's so worth checking on those sessions. But there was one we've just had that I think is just like such a great question, which is I want to use Tailscale to do cool things with friends, but I don't want to go beyond free users because I don't want to pay. What cool stuff can I do? And I, I absolutely love how open-ended. What cool stuff can I do? Honestly, I could talk your ear off for the next 24 hours about everything you can do with Tailscale that I think is cool. I appreciate cool's probably subjective. Completely understand if you're using it as like a home labber or you're just wanting to do something with friends. I get that you don't want to, have to go onto a paid package for that. With our personal plan, so you can have up to 3 users, but up to 100 devices in your telnet. So usually the device limitation there being so high helps you get a lot done. I'd say, yeah. I mean, just touching on kind of how someone wants to use their gaming server, you can play multiplayer games privately. You could collaborate on projects if you wanted to together. It's kind of a question where it's like, how long is a piece of string? You could also remote access to devices. Like I've given someone remote access to my Apple TV and my mini PC. So that was like a really cool way to do it. But yeah, it's a very open-ended question, but one I'd love for us to have, maybe a blog post on or something. But yeah, that made me smile. I really like that one.
Yeah, you can be 3 users, use tagged machines to tag up to, use 100 up to 100 devices. As long as you're happy with that the 3 of you are going to be the ones being the admins on the tailnet, you can do a lot with that with 100 devices. So I think we're at a good point to wrap up. Really want to thank everyone for tuning in. As always, we love getting your questions. We love thinking about the questions we can answer all day. So, but we're really happy for all of your time that you give us. There are 2 things I just wanted to mention. The first one, of course, again, is going to be that wonderful AMA session with Simon Law, one of our awesome engineers on the Tailscale team. That is going to be August 5th on the R Tailscale subreddit, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And of course, the next Ask a Tailscale Expert session is going to be on August the 13th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 a.m. Pacific. And you will be joined once again by our amazing Alex and our lovely colleague Jay. So yeah, thank you. It's been awesome. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah,
Anything from you, Poppy?
I don't think so, but thank you so much for attending. I think any unanswered questions, I think we do try and get back to them. Don't hold me accountable for that. I may be throwing marketing under the bus there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. A great session. And I'm sure Kartik and I will be on another one in the future. So hope to see